Hey gang, what do you know? We've got another Arthur Hensel guitar here. You'll recall several months ago I did some work on a Hensel, actually two of them. This is another one of his made for the RS Williams company of Toronto circa the 1930s or 40s. This one is in slightly better condition in some ways, and in other ways it's really confounding me. This was brought to me by the same gentleman who brought me that wonderful LG1 Gibson last week. To have converted back to a right-handed guitar. This one is currently a righty. He wants to change it into a lefty. It's a guitar he wants to play. This is quite similar to the one I looked at last time. Has the same beautiful carved headstock. This board it might be ebony or extremely dark rosewood. I think it's ebony. We'll find out. The top is an eastern spruce, Adirondack, white spruce, red spruce, one of those. Back and sides on this one are solid mahogany. The finish seems to be a little bit different, if this is the original finish, and I think it is. The previous one looked like it was French polished shellac. This one is a varnish or a lacquer of some kind, and I can see evidence of brush marks on it, so it was brushed on. This player would like me to remove the pick guard because he's a left-handed player. We'll preserve that for posterity. There's some funny stuff going on. This guitar has had a neck reset. The action is great. Looking at the bridge though, there's some funny stuff going on here. I want to know who this guy is. Remember that Gretsch I did earlier in the year that came to me and it was missing a bridge and there was a big trough cut out of the top of the guitar, looking as if someone was going to inlay the bridge in? Well, I don't know if this is the same person, or maybe it's part of a clan, but this bridge has been sunken into the top, maybe to offset the need for a neck reset. And it's crazy. I mean, Hensel had an interesting router shaper type cutter that he used to make his bridges that have this decorative little feature on the ends. It's almost like a piece of molding, furniture molding. But no, this has been cut into the top around the circumference, and you know, not that cleanly either. There's a gap. Let's see if I can throw some light on it. So we're going to try to, you know, fill these sort of spaces up with something, make it a little bit more presentable. But whoever you are, I want to find out who you are and ask you why you're doing this, because there's no need for this. You know, I hope that you're not still doing this if you are. There's quite a lot of saddle height on this, and when we switch it over to a lefty, I might actually improve the action slightly. Other than that, it's, you know, another Hensel. It sounds really nice. It's a good guitar. There's been some work done on the frets as well. These look like the original frets to me. They're quite narrow. In the middle positions, there's some glue along each side of some of these frets, and there's some minor chipping, which shows me that they've been either pulled out or pulled up. So some work was done. I don't know, maybe these were low and someone tried to pull them up to sort of increase the fret height. We're going to clean off the glue around them, and some of them could use a little bit of crowning. I see the 12th fret here has been filed down flat and it's still quite rough. So we're going to improve that in terms of playability. When the person did this neck reset, they used a large wedge underneath the upper portion of the fingerboard there, which is fine, and it's a pretty good job. Material matches nicely. There's evidence of the sandpaper pulling technique around the heel. Finish is damaged somewhat. Was not touched up in any way. I might put a little shellac on there or something. The end of the heel, obviously, I hope this was maybe the first time he did this. I'm assuming it's a he. Protect the heel with something when you try to push it off the body using one of the Stumac style jigs. Otherwise you'll end up with a divot on the end of the heel. So yeah, I think maybe we can color that a little bit and make it look more presentable. On the back there's a bit of a crack right down towards the widest portion of the lower bout. So we're going to Get glue in there and we'll cleat that. And other than that, you know, we're just going to make it play as nicely as we possibly can. Alright friends, I'm running into something that's really interesting here. I'm just plotting out the compensation scheme. I'm going to talk about this in millimeters because fractional inches, they're just not going to help us out. From the nut to the 12th fret is about 311 millimeters. So we would expect the entire string length to be about 622, plus a couple of extra millimeters for stretch compensation. When I put a rule on here on the high E string, rather than that 624, I get 629 millimeters. On the bass side, I get 631. So by my reckoning, there's at least 5 extra millimeters worth of compensation length on this. Okay, so the bridge pin holes are in the center of the bridge pad, which is better than nothing. That's good. You can see this is an X-braced guitar, which I'm suspecting means this is maybe a little bit later than the previous ones I saw. They were both ladder braced. And the braces themselves, they're quite low overall. There's some fancifully scalloped tone bars there, quite sculptural, and very, very low in the center. He took them down to almost nothing. Plastic pickguard is in very good shape. I don't know what kind of material it is, but it held up really well. There we go, not too bad. It's a little bit of a suntan, but looks okay. I'm going to be installing some fret markers, some dots on the side of the fretboard. There's also a little chip here, which I'd like to take care of because it's going to be visible to the player. So I've mixed up a little bit of ebony dust and super glue, and I'll make a little fill. We'll let that dry, and I'll come back and level it at the same time that I'm leveling all of the fretboard markers. Just slightly reaming those holes using an 1/8 inch drill bit. I'm going backwards. This is going to compress the wood fibers of the side wall of the hole, and they're going to swell back up when the glue hits them, so it's going to be a good tight fit. So with that filler strip sanded level and some oil on it, it looks really good. Excellent color match. But that might not be an issue anymore. I talked with a customer, described the intonation issue, and he said, you know what, I intend to play this guitar for the rest of my life. I think probably the best thing for this guitar in the long run is to take the bridge off and move it where it really should have been from the beginning. I said, yeah, I like that idea, but there's some reservations that come along with it, because this thing obviously has been inlaid into the top. How deep, I don't know, but it looks like it's significant. I don't know what kind of adhesive was used to do that, so it's possible I could heat this thing up and it just doesn't come free. It's also going to be really difficult to get a knife in there between the two layers of wood to separate it. So, you know, worst case scenario, I'm going to have to route this off entirely and make a new bridge that's similar in character. I don't feel that bad about it because this one has already been lowered. It's the original contours have been altered slightly, so, you know, a new bridge that looks similar to the way Arthur had originally designed it, I can do that. Inlaying the spruce plug, I've done that before. So, you know, this is a tricky one though. It's a bit of a can of worms. So we're crossing our fingers that things are going to go well. Okay, so I got the top protected with a layer of thick cardboard and then another layer of poster board here. The cardboard has air pockets in it, which I think acts as sort of an insulator. And the poster board is white, theoretically, reflecting some heat. This is just a regular household iron. I don't have it set on screaming hot. It's like sort of a medium-low temperature. And I'm just going to heat this gently, check it a few times to make sure I'm not sort of cooking the finish or making it stick to the cardboard. Just get enough heat into it that I can start playing around with. It'll take probably 6 or 8 minutes. So far this isn't going very well. I can't get a knife underneath it. The lip here is just too high, and I'm going to end up crushing the top if I try to angle it. Yeah, there's no place for me to get a knife under it. I took off the bulk of the old bridge using a hand plane. I made up this little trough to hold the router the correct distance off the top, and went down incrementally and got rid of the old bridge in steps. Yeah, that's one of 2 steel pins that were hidden in there for me to find with the router bit. Thanks, buddy. At a certain point I started to get worried. It felt like I was getting really thin on one side, so I decided to stop there and made a piece of spruce that would plug in the hole pretty exactly. I spent some time making a bridge that has a lot of the design elements that Arthur had. It's not an exact copy because I don't have his shaper cutter, and that would be ridiculously arduous to reproduce. But it is definitely in the spirit of his bridges. I took a lot of care to make sure the bridge went on in exactly the right location. The little cardboard pieces there are registration marks to make sure it's perpendicular to the center line and the scale length is exactly where it should be. I made up a new nut for the left-handed configuration and put some glue in that back crack. This is just a little clamp I made up with some shaped cauls and some 1/4-20 rod. I also used a couple of cleats on the inside to shore it up. Cleaned off the offending glue on the fretboard and polished and recrowned the frets that needed it. And it sure looked a lot better once I got some oil on it. It was a very dry board. And then did my best to sort of color match the new patch to the old finish. Okay, it's all strung up and ready to go. I'd play you something, but I'm right-handed. Tell you a secret, I almost put the strings on in the wrong order when I strung it up. I was thinking about that bridge and what went on there. And I can sort of envision a situation where it's Monday morning, you have a dozen bodies on the bench. You decide to go ahead and mark the exact string length on all of those bodies. The scale length, in this case, is 24.5 inches. Then you go and have lunch, and in the afternoon you make up a dozen bridges to go on those bodies. In the interim, you have forgotten that this line represents the exact scale length. And you take those bridges and you glue them on so that the front edge of the bridge is touching that line, rather than where the saddle is. So you've set everything back the distance between the front edge of the bridge and the saddle, which can be 5-6 millimeters. So there's likely a batch of these guitars that went out like that. Can we blame him? Well, maybe, but also have to remember these are extremely sort of affordable guitars in their era. This is not a Martin. This guitar doesn't even have sound hole decoration or binding. So they were catalog guitars. Who knows how much he was making on them per unit basis. But they've got beautiful materials in them. Nice ebony board, nice white spruce top. And it's hung together for, 70 plus years, so we can't fault it on the craftsmanship. Anyway, it's been fun working on this. I should actually have a number of other Hensels coming in the next couple of weeks. The person who owns this one went on a bit of a buying spree and is now a collector of them, and so we can maybe do some comparisons as those show up. Anyhow, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.